We recently did a small video over on our Facebook page that went over the basic benefits of growing your own ginger at home. That video reached a lot of viewers and seemed to help a lot of people. So in today's video, I've decided to do a full-length growing guide on everything that you need to know from starting your ginger from the ginger root all the way up to getting large, healthy transplants for your spring garden. Let's get into it. Ginger is one of the most commonly cultivated crops in the world, and for good reason. It can be used for cooking, for canning, for drying and turning into spices, and has so many health benefits. So why would we not try to give it a shot and grow it in our garden? So the first thing that you're going to need to know or do when growing ginger at home is going to the store and picking up some store-bought ginger. When you're doing this, it is very important to pick up the largest pieces possible. You don't want tiny pieces. Something really small, as these have a much less chance of survival, success rate. The larger pieces, they have more buds on them. You're going to have a lot higher chance of success when you're using the larger pieces. The next important thing is choosing a piece that is firm, that is not super soft, it's not squishy or crusty, that's not all dried out. You want something that has signs of life, something that when you crack it open, it's green, it's vibrant, and just something that's really firm and you can see signs of life. Perhaps the number one thing that you want to look for when selecting your ginger at the store is getting pieces that have a large number of buds on them. Every piece should have at least 3 to 5 buds, at least the ones that you are selecting because you're growing for your garden. You're wanting to grow new ginger. And that's only possible with these buds. So if you're grabbing large pieces, small pieces, whatever you decide to grab, and they don't have a lot of buds on them, you're going to lessen your chance of success. Now, these are what the buds look like. They are basically just little nodules of what will become the leaf growth. These are what you're looking for. So when you're at the store, a lot of times they're not going to be that big. These have been sitting for a few weeks, but this is ideal. This is what you're looking for. Like I said, a lot of times in the store, they're not going to have these. They will just be tiny little nubs around your ginger root. That's okay, as long as it has that. But if your pieces have, the larger nubs or nodules, that's going to move your growing date closer. So you won't have to wait as long for ginger, because those nubs are actually 3 to 4 weeks, I'd say, old. When I first bought this ginger about a month ago, it had no buds on it whatsoever. So if you can find pieces with the larger nubs, you're going to have, a better chance of survival, and you're going to have an earlier harvesting date. So when you're searching for your ginger at the store, make sure you search or look for the nubs, the nodules. At least 3 to 5 is ideal for every piece that you select. Again, selecting the largest pieces possible is important when it comes to growing your own ginger, because you're going to get more buds, which equals more plant material, which equals more photosynthesis, more energy for the plant, which equals more ginger at harvest time. So look for the largest pieces possible. Again, not the smallest. You don't want anything with 1 or 2 buds on it. Those will work, but oftentimes they take a lot longer to mature, and they just don't give you that maximum ginger harvest that we're all looking for. I do want to clarify that the whole reason that we're doing this is because ginger is a very long season, tropical climate crop. So on average, ginger takes 8 to 10 months to get a complete harvest. So most places in the world need to start it indoors. If you are in a completely tropical climate that experiences no frost whatsoever, you could just grab your ginger, stick it in the ground, and let it go. It will act as a weed. It will almost just take over. It really does not require too much attention, and it's not really something that you need to worry too much about once you plant it in the ground. But the biggest thing is that ginger cannot take a frost. So if you stick this in the ground too early, frost comes, it can be very detrimental for your ginger. a lot of times just killing it off. So that's not what we're going for. That's not what we want. So we really want to make sure that we are planting indoors to maximize our amount of growing days and to make sure that we're getting a successful ginger harvest. For example, in our growing zone, we are in zone 5, Michigan, and we have about 6 full months of frost-free growing days. Now I say frost-free because that is super important. You want to make sure that wherever you're at, whatever growing zone or map, whatever your weather climate is like, you need to make sure that you have enough growing days to be able to harvest a successful crop of ginger. So if you have, let's say, only 3 to 4 months of frost-free growing days, you really want to start your ginger indoors 4 to 5 months ahead of time indoors to make sure that you are giving your ginger enough time to establish or to get established and to get a successful harvest of ginger. So now that you have all of the back info on selecting the right pieces of ginger and when you should get it planted outdoors and how long it takes to reach a successful ginger harvest, let's go inside and go over all of the steps you need to getting this ginger prepped, planted, and ready to grow. Okay, really the first step in getting your ginger prepped and ready to be planted is giving it a nice soak prior to planting. What do I mean by that? A lot of times when you go to buy ginger at the store, it is sprayed with a growth inhibitor chemical that prevents it from sprouting. They do this because in the consumer's eye or the person purchasing the ginger at the store, it looks ugly. It does not look, like you should be cooking with it. Has all these green buds coming out of it. It just looks funky, and it's just not something that somebody would want to use when cooking. So to prevent it, they've sprayed it with a chemical that stops the buds from forming, that stops all types of growth. And while a lot of times people do have success just planting this in the ground, even with the chemical on it, it's still best to use this method to remove that, because you really don't want that in your garden soil or anywhere near your garden. So you can remove that chemical with this simple method. Basically, all we're doing here is just grabbing a bowl of water and then using some hydrogen peroxide to remove that chemical. A lot of people use just water. I like to take the extra step. Hydrogen peroxide is cheap, and I like to just pour. It really does not matter. I'd say maybe 3 to 5 tablespoons per gallon of water if you want to be accurate. But really, I just put about that much in a bowl of water. So it doesn't have to be perfect. If you do too much or too less, it doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt the ginger in any way. So after you've poured that in the water, you're going to want to soak your ginger in it for about 24 hours. This really does remove all of that chemical and any other debris or stuff that might have somehow landed on your ginger throughout the shipping process or the process of getting it to the grocery store. So to do this, again, just soaking your ginger in the water, again, for around 24 hours, just to be safe. I will mention that if your ginger is organic, if you paid for an organic type of ginger, organic ginger does not contain this chemical, so you don't have to do this. You can go straight to planting it. This is organic ginger, and I'm still giving it a nice soak just to remove any other type of chemicals or anything else that could be contaminated or on the ginger. And I'm just taking, again, that little extra step to ensure that I'm planting healthy ginger and that it will grow. Okay, after your ginger has been soaking for around 24 hours, you can remove it from the water solution. After you remove the ginger from the water, the next step you're going to want to take is breaking the pieces apart into smaller clumps. Now we do this because by breaking them apart into smaller clumps, it actually results in a larger yield. If you leave all of these buds, there's probably, I'd say, 8 buds on this piece. If you left all of those buds on this one piece of ginger, A lot of times, once it starts growing, these are all going to start sprouting. These roots are going to get entangled at the bottom, and it's going to cause issues later down the road. So by breaking it apart and spacing these pieces farther apart, you're actually going to get a higher yield of ginger. More of these are going to sprout and actually survive rather than wither off and die later on. Just make sure that when breaking these larger pieces up into smaller clumps, that the smaller pieces have at least 2 to 3 nodules per piece to make sure that you're getting a successful harvest, and to make sure that if one doesn't sprout, you have other buds to rely on, and to make sure that no piece goes to waste. Okay, after you've gotten your ginger into smaller pieces, the next step is planting. And to do so, the first thing that you're going to need is some type of tray or bowl. You can use really anything. You can use pots, anything that can fit the ginger, just making sure that it's at least 3 to 5 inches deep. That's important so that the roots can get established in the tray and make sure that you are getting healthy, large, sizable transplants for your garden. After you've gotten your tray, the next thing that we're going to need to do is fill it up about halfway to 3/4 of the way up with seed starting mix. You can use potting soil and other stuff, but seed starting mix does have the best success as it's light and fluffy and allows for those roots, those early roots, to get established. Okay, after you've gotten your tray filled up with the seed starting mix, we can start planting the pieces in it. You want to make sure that the soil is nice and moist. Again, ginger is a tropical climate crop, so it really does need a moist environment with nice amounts of heat, which we'll get into later on in this video. But you really want to make sure that it's nice and moist, not soggy to where these start to rot, but moist to where it really does help this ginger sprout. It really does need moisture to start budding out and sprouting, especially if you're looking to do it quickly. If your soil dries out at all, it can cause more harm than good. So just make sure that your seed starting mix or whatever medium that you're growing in stays nice and moist throughout the process, so that 1, your ginger does not dry out, but 2, it just speeds up the whole process and you have ginger transplants quicker than you would if you let this keep drying out. So one thing to mention with this is that ginger, though we call it ginger root, it's actually a rhizome. Rhizomes are underground or modified underground stems, so they're not an actual root. This is important because you don't want to plant this too deep. If you plant this too deep, making it acting like it's a root, it's not going to do as well as it would if you placed it at more of the top of the soil. So when you're planting these, you're really just going to push them down very lightly, not too deep. That's probably about 1/2 inch deep underneath the soil, and then you're just going to lightly cover them. Again, because it's a modified underground stem and not a root, you want to make sure that you're not planting them too deep. Spacing wise, really about 2 to 3 inches apart is how far you want to plant these. If you have smaller pieces like this, you can plant them a little bit closer, but the larger pieces, really about 2 to 3 inches apart. Again, just pushing down about 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep, nothing too much. And making sure you space them far enough apart to where the roots can get established and they're not going to all get entangled. Like that. And that's really all there is to planting them. And then again, you can just get a little bit extra soil, cover the top of them, and really in about 3 to 4 weeks, you will start seeing sprouts come up from this ginger. Okay, after we've gotten all of the ginger planted and ready to start growing, the next step that we are going to need to take is putting this on a heat mat. Now, that might not seem that important, but it's actually one of the most important steps that you can take. Not only is it going to speed up the process by double the time, but is actually super important. Because ginger is a tropical climate crop, like we've talked about earlier in this video, it needs the warm weather. It needs that warmth to really trigger it to start sprouting. A lot of times if you don't have a heat mat and your room temperature is about 60 to 70 degrees, somewhere in that range, it's not gonna sprout quickly. These ginger roots can take months, if you're lucky, to start sprouting if you don't have that heat mat. If you have a heat mat, on the other hand, ginger can really start sprouting in 3 to 4 weeks. We have another flat that's been sitting for about 3 to 4 weeks, which I'll show you in a little bit, that we use a heat mat for, and you'll be able to see the difference in how fast this stuff is really starting to sprout and what it looks like. I think it's pretty cool. So we're gonna put this on the heat mat. I have a heat mat right here. And then one thing that you can do to keep in that heat, to make almost like a mini greenhouse, to keep it like that tropical temperature that we're looking for, is to put something over it, preferably clear, so that sunlight can still break through. And that's gonna be able to keep that heat in, and it's really gonna make it 80 to 90 degrees in there, which is really what we're looking for. That's what the ginger needs, especially in the earliest phases of its growth. So make sure that you have some type of humidity dome over the top, making sure that's on the heat mat. This way you really do speed up this whole process. After you've gotten your ginger planted, placed under heat mat with a humidity dome, you're really gonna start seeing those ginger roots starting to sprout in about 3 to 4 weeks. It's a really exciting process. We actually have an example that we did about 4 weeks prior to this, and these things are looking amazing. We're really starting to see sprouts come up. It's really cool. The roots are starting to develop, and you can see here, if I pull this one up, you can see how cool that is. You can also see the roots, which are right there, really starting to form. So what will happen is that when that 3 to 4 weeks come, or whenever your ginger starts sprouting, these roots will start developing at the underside of that leaf growth that's starting to sprout. You'll start seeing little tiny roots come off of it. Those roots will start spreading, and before long, the whole base of this is going to be covered in roots. So it's a really fun experience. Even if you're not wanting to plant outdoors, this is still a really cool thing that you can do. You can put on your kitchen counter or anywhere, and you can get amazing looking plants for cheap, and it's just a really fun process that you can be a part of and do at home. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future content coming soon, and be sure to check out our seed shop. We've got a ton of amazing rare varieties on there that you can grow and be able to follow along with us as we grow all of our seeds for this coming season. Thanks for watching.